Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm Ted Rall. John Kiriakou is joining me. We are here for the DeProgram show. We're going to have something exciting. We're going to figure out regular, normal times to broadcast this live. So for people who like to watch live and participate in the live chat, there will be a predictable time. We will announce that next week, and you'll be able to plan your whole life around us. You know, quit your job, get a new job. Anyway, it's Thursday, May 22nd, and thanks for joining us. So, John, I think
Ted, I've got to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
I think your sound is not good, and I'm hoping it's not my connection, but it sounds kind of like an accordion playing.
Oh, that's not good.
That's not good. Now you sound okay.
You sound okay to me.
Okay, good. Well, let me tell you, we were going to start with this Israeli embassy double murder. It looks like it might be just me. Okay, let me know if my sound cuts out, and I'll figure something out. But anyway, right. Last night, 2 Israeli embassy staff members were murdered outside of a museum I had never heard of, the National Jewish Museum. I've lived in Washington for 43 years. I've never heard of this museum, but
that's strange.
They were coming out. Yeah, and a guy named Elias Rodriguez was apparently waiting for someone to come out. They weren't specifically targeted. He apparently planned to shoot the first people that came out of the museum. These were 2 Israeli embassy staff members. He killed them both. They were apparently soon to be engaged to be married, and he shouted "Free, free Palestine" as they were taking him away. And just a moment ago, I got a push notification from the New York Times saying that he's been arraigned and charged with first-degree murder ×2. And he shouted in court, "I did it for Palestine. I did it for Gaza." You know, I'll tell you too, Ted, the one thing that has really surprised me about this is reading the comments on the Washington Post article and the comments at Unilad, which is an online kind of light news service. There are no pro-Israeli comments, period. There just are none. People are saying things like thoughts and prayers, or this was 3,000 years in the making, or that's okay because right after they were getting married, they were going to go look for property in the West Bank. It's of course wrong to murder, right? We yell about the Israelis all the time. This is just as wrong, but I understand why it happened. And when I say that, I hope people understand me. I condemn this double killing unreservedly, but I understand why the anger, the fury boiled over.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, look, this is not like, if we're trying to emancipate the people of Palestine, this is not the way you do it. Now, I have to admit, I would have different feelings if the victim were a high-ranking IDF general, and I would feel like that was
I would agree.
A legitimate target. These are low-level embassy staffers. They're nobodies, and you can certainly argue that nobody should work for the state of Israel. But I mean, really, in the real world, these are what they used to call in World War II the little fish, very little fish, minnows.
Yes.
And so it doesn't do any good. It feeds into the narrative of Bibi Netanyahu and his government, and it says, you know, who they've been crowing. Here we go. This is the anti-Semitism we've been talking about. There's no evidence whatsoever that Mr. Rodriguez, if he is indeed the killer, is anti-Semitic at all. All we know is that he favors the liberation of Palestine. And it's irresponsible to suggest otherwise. He may well be anti-Semitic, and if so, I'll talk about that.
Yeah, we don't know anything about this guy.
No, we don't know anything. So, but you know, just last week, John, I wrote my syndicated column was with the headline, "How Zionism causes or encourages anti-Semitism. And to me, this is almost like an illustration of it, right? I mean,
Oh yeah,
literally,
Ted.
it's like that's it literally when you if you conflate anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, and then you operate behind the scenes to like basically have people deported. You have them, their diplomas removed, they're expelled, they're suspended, their lives are ruined, and it seems like, and then or you have like shadowy campaign donors. Donors to colleges and universities calling behind the scenes and getting campus groups banned and so on. It feeds into these classic anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about like Jewish conspiracies. So it's it really is dangerous to Jews. I mean, these Zionists are dangerous. They're a menace to Jews, and a lot of Jews get that, and they don't like it. And I mean, and I know quite a few who really don't care for it. And
Ted, not the last time I was in New York, which was yesterday when I saw you, but the time before, a few weeks earlier.
Yeah,
I had lunch with a buddy of mine in some nice restaurant, and there was a table next to us of two elderly women, turned out to be both in their early 80s. They looked much younger, but they were listening to our conversation. And of course, we were talking about Gaza and the West Bank and, these lunatics who are members of the Israeli parliament, the Israeli cabinet. And one of them said, "Excuse me, I couldn't help but to overhear your conversation." She said, "We're both Jewish. And what you're talking about is exactly what we fear. We fear that Benjamin Netanyahu and the right-wing extremists that he surrounds himself with are pushing the world into anti-Semitism. It's not that Palestinians are anti-Semitic, which of course they're very Semitic, but that's a whole different conversation." She said that Netanyahu has led the country so far to the right that the rest of the world is turning against it. And it's easy to transition from being anti-Zionist to being anti-Semitic. And that's exactly what they fear. And I said, I have to agree. It would never even occur to me that it would not have occurred to me 20 years ago that we would be in this position where the Israeli government is so right-wing that it might actually lead to its own destruction.
Yeah, it's funny, right, that you mentioned that. Like, I remember up until, like you say, about 20 years ago, my take, and I'd been to Israel a number of times, was like, I would come back and I'd say, their government, and back then, was far to the right of where Israeli society was. I felt like, probably half of the Israeli people really wanted to see an independent, free Palestinian sovereign state.
Sure.
They wanted to live.
So they don't have to deal with it anymore. Exactly.
But also there were a lot of liberal Israelis who just generally felt like it was the right thing, and it's the fair thing, and it's what needed to happen. And I mean that those people are still there, but there's fewer of them. The government has pulled them to the right. The situation's been radicalized. No doubt, October 7th radicalized the situation more. War makes societies stupid, as we saw after 9/11. So people just become idiots. And it's really frightening. And I wonder at some point, when will this stop? I mean, Netanyahu, he's corrupt. He's
on his face.
Terrible prime minister. If you only care about the state of Israel and its future, and you want the state of Israel to be successful, Netanyahu is not helping.
Got that right. And this is a guy who's been prime minister longer than any other person in the history of Israel, and he has never won more than 27% of the vote. Never. Now that's crazy. Of course, attributed to the fact that Israel has so many political parties and such. But if that is absolutely correct. Who wrote that? Rofi. Thank you for that. That is absolutely correct. Apac, just for my own curiosity, Ted, I started doing some research into Apac, and Apac was this like it was like this fringe lobby group from when it was founded in the 1950s until the early 1970s. Nobody paid any attention to it. It wasn't terribly busy on Capitol Hill. And then when Richard Nixon guaranteed the security of Israel, everything changed. And it changed right under our noses, and people didn't even notice it. I gave a speech at the biggest conservative synagogue in Manhattan back in 2011. Tehereth Jeshurun, it was called. Gigantic place on Park Avenue, no less. And it just happened to be what was called Israel Bond Day. I had never heard of this, but every year, once a year, one Saturday, in every synagogue in America, they sell bonds. And the bonds, they're Israeli government bonds that are used to supplement the funding of the IDF. So in the 30 minutes before my speech, where the rabbi got up and said, "Oh, today's Israel Bond Day. Pull out your checkbooks, everybody. Let's buy some bonds and help the IDF." $500,000 in the 30 minutes that we were waiting for people to finish writing their checks. Wow. $500,000. Okay, this is one synagogue. Now imagine this is happening in every synagogue in America and Canada on the same day.
That's crazy.
And then on top of that, you've got the billionaires that are financing Apac, and then you've got the campaign contributions coming from Apac that essentially buy most of America's politicians, at least at the federal level. It's just not a good situation at all, and I'm not sure how we go back from this.
Well, it's the blank check, right? No nation state should get a blank check from the United States of America.
And if I were president, that would be the first thing I'd say. Yes.
And why is the IDF, begging for cash when they're getting when they're getting part of the $4 billion a year from the U.S.
Yeah.
in foreign aid?
And the IDF
that's not going to healthcare.
No, the IDF advertises on TV in Florida. Call this toll-free number and show your support for Israel. I never saw such a thing. I happen to be in Miami and they're running these TV ads. Call this number with your credit card and support the IDF. It's like, are you kidding me?
It's bizarre.
It is.
Yeah. It's like, I don't.
Yes.
Can you imagine, I don't call this number and support the national armed military of Bolivia. Like, what? Why?
Yeah, it's like, what? What are you talking about?
Come on, you're Bolivian. You love Bolivia. Support our right to defend ourselves against the Colombians. What?
Yeah.
Very strange. And so it's interesting to me that obviously news out of Gaza is never unfortunately a dull moment. A dull moment would be a beautiful thing at this point. But this news hit just as really credible reports of mass starvation are starting to.
Yes.
They're all over the place. They're unavoidable. They're all over mainstream media. It's not just the Gaza Health Ministry. It's the AP, it's the New York Times, it's the Guardian. Children are dying of starvation, and this is because Israel won't allow food, medical aid, water, fuel into the Gaza Strip. It's been months. Trucks are
Yes.
sitting there. I don't even know, by the way, how the trucks, what kind of food it is that it's able to maybe even survive all this time waiting unrefrigerated, presumably. I guess it's dry goods, I assume. But still, and I think the Israelis are starting to feel a little bit of heat here. At a certain point,
the heat is coming from the Europeans.
Yes.
It's the British, the French, the Germans that are saying, hey, you guys have gone too far. We're going to freeze aid right now until you let this food in. That has not been enough to force the Israelis to actually let the food in. They've let in two trucks to feed 2 million people. The Irish have had the guts to stand up and break relations with, I don't know if they broke relations so much as they froze relations and asked the Israeli ambassador to leave. But the Israelis aren't going to do anything until Donald Trump tells them enough is enough. And I'm not seeing that happening.
although there's certainly some, there's some word behind the scenes that Donald Trump seems to no longer quite be marching to Bibi's drummer.
Yes.
He's probably, by most accounts, right, the rumor mill is that Netanyahu's an unpleasant, very demanding partner to American leaders. And that doesn't seem like a recipe made to work with the Donald.
Yes.
And, I think the Donald probably feels quite rightly that he's done quite a bit for Israel already. He moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, something that the hardliners have wanted for years. He's sent them tons of money. But I think he has he's a showman, and he knows that the optics of what he seems to be supporting are really bad. And it's the same really bad that Joe Biden, who is now lies completely discredited by the Jake Tapper book, which came out yesterday, which I'm about a third of the way through.
Bombshells, one after the other.
Are you reading it?
Yeah.
So I expect, I expected that most of the meat, like in the Bob Woodward books, you don't really have to buy those books because most of the meat turns up in the Washington Post. Not so in the Jake Tapper stuff, because there's meat on every single page. And
I feel compelled to write something about this. I feel compelled to take a swipe at Jill Biden because
she's Lady Macbeth.
She's Lady Macbeth. That's exactly right. That's a great way to put it. She knew from the first time he ran, or not the first time he ran, but from his first term, from the campaign before his first term, that he was demented.
Mm-hmm.
And she led him around, led him on stage, led him off stage, covered for him. This is like Edith Wilson and Woodrow Wilson all over again.
Right. However, it's worse because Woodrow Wilson came into the White House in 1913 sharp. He didn't leave that way, but Ronald Reagan,
massive stroke.
Came in sharp.
Ronald Reagan,
sharp guy, smarter than I gave him credit for at the time. As it turns out, when you read his letters, you're like, actually, he was a very thoughtful guy. But and it's not right to leave a sitting president in office for a year or two when his mind is mush. It's not right. But this is a whole different level.
This was a cover-up. Yeah.
They elected a guy that they knew was already senile. He was already suffering from dementia. From day one of the campaign. According to the Tapper book, his mind blew up when Bo died in 2015.
Right.
And they ran him 5 years later. So he wasn't better by then, right? Aging doesn't.
No.
Of course, obviously, it's not like always a straight line, but it's just. But there was a general downward trajectory. Some of these stories are absolutely stunning.
He talks about, for example, 1 week into his presidency, Biden goes to Capitol Hill at the invitation of Nancy Pelosi to talk about the Democratic agenda, and just could not vocalize why he was there. Looking around, smiling at people, and she took over to say, "Well, here's the Biden agenda. This is what we're going to do." He was worthless, useless. The 1 week into his presidency. So we need to blame Joe Biden. We need to blame Nancy Pelosi. We need to blame Kamala Harris. We need to blame whoever it was that happened to be head of the DNC. They all were part of this conspiracy to cover up for him. And then he had the unmitigated gall to run for re-election.
It's unbelievable, right? And behind the scenes, right? Everybody knew better. So there's this group of 5, cronies, whom are described as the Politburo by Jake Tapper in the book, who are basically these insiders that you've never heard of, who are basically campaign advisors and staff. And they basically they've been running the country now. I assumed it was like, I really thought it was Tony Blinken was running the country.
Yeah.
Turns out he really wasn't. It turns out, Lloyd Austin, there's a reason why Lloyd Austin thought he could go AWOL, because nobody needed him.
Who's he going to tell?
It's a no-show job, like in The Sopranos. It's like, I mean, right. None of them were talking to the president, and nobody needed to talk to the president because the president really wasn't the president. He was only around from like 10 to 4 by all accounts. If something had happened, that famous ad, there's a phone in the White House. There's a crisis at 3:00 in the morning. Who's going to pick up that phone? Not Joe Biden.
Do we wake the president?
If it was after 5 p.m., he wasn't picking up that phone. Couldn't pick up that phone. It'd be scary if he picked up that phone. And all these like things that we thought were just gaffes, like, we'll go to war over Taiwan. No, it turns out he was.
Yeah, it's like, wait, what?
Bonkers. He literally didn't know the policy. He's literally addled. I mean, I guess it's in some ways, it's the ultimate. The wisdom of the founding fathers is exhibited by the fact that the country didn't burn to the ground over the last 4 years, and here we are still talking. So I guess it's a great system. It's president proof. I kind of said that about Trump's first term too. But now this is unparalleled in terms of political scandals. Not only I'm going to say, I don't think there's ever been anything close in the last 250 years. I don't know that any other, you can look at many other countries that have had something like this. I think you have to go to like ancient Rome with the emperor who turned his horse into a god. You have to find that level of corruption and insanity. I don't think, there were thoughts that, Brezhnev wasn't really all that great by the late 70s. It wasn't like this. I mean,
no way. And besides, they had a Politburo that they admitted to, Right. Okay, yeah. The general secretary's addled. That's okay, because we have these 12 guys around him that are going to run the country. We don't have it here. In this book, are admissions that, the cabinet members would go a year without ever seeing the president. No meetings, no nothing. He just wouldn't see his cabinet members. He probably wouldn't have even known many of his cabinet members.
Yeah, apparently that's a recurring theme in the book, right? Where he meets people whom he's known for years. And I don't think he has that disease where you don't recognize faces. He's just was suffering from dementia.
You and I were talking.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You and I were talking a couple of days ago about the George Clooney op-ed in the New York Times, and I remember when we were still on Sputnik saying, why would George Clooney, of all people, write an op-ed for the New York Times now on this issue? Well, now we have an answer, because Biden flew out to California for this major fundraiser, like the biggest fundraiser in the history of the Democratic Party. And he didn't have the foggiest idea who George Clooney was. And he's known Clooney for years. And Clooney was one of his primary fundraisers. No idea who he was. And finally, one of the aides said, "Oh, Mr. President, you remember George." And Biden says, "Thanks for your support, George." Like, no, he doesn't have any freaking idea who this guy is. That's just raised $10 million for him in one night.
And no idea. And who is George Clooney, by the way?
And who is George Clooney? Like, everybody in the world knows who George Clooney is. And then Clooney talked to, who was it? Was it Katzenberg? It was somebody big.
Yeah.
And said, I'm gonna write this op-ed. And he's like, "Oh, please don't do it. Please, please." No, I got to write this op-ed. And he went and did it. And then just today, I read about the whole Taylor Swift thing, where they sent what's her name? Pretty Woman.
Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts. They sent Julia Roberts to convince Taylor Swift to make an endorsement, because she had heard from her Hollywood friends that the president is, just an empty mannequin. And Julia Roberts apparently talked her into it. This is a bad look from absolutely every angle for the Democratic Party. This is just terrible. they try to pull one over the eyes of the American people. And why would any voter trust you now when you tried to do something like this?
And so what's interesting to me too is in reading the book, Tapper, he repeatedly keeps coming back to the polls that show that the public just wasn't on board. None of this worked, right? That's why Biden lost, or why he would have lost, and how Harris lost. And it's fascinating to me that even though they propagandized, they had control, so much control of so much influence, nevertheless, the American people sat in their living rooms in, wherever, and they looked at the TV and they're like, I'm not buying what you're selling. That guy is too old and he's out of it and he can't do it. And I'm not going to vote for him. And just the answer is no. And the arrogance of the powers that be inside the Democratic Party to think, no, we'll convince them. I mean, there's that. I mean, I'm sure you've gotten to this point. It comes up pretty early on, where at one point, one of Biden's veteran pollsters calls in and says, "Oh, well, I'd like to run some polling numbers, some internal polls on the age issue." "Oh no, we don't need any polling." The Politburo tells him. "What do you mean you don't need any polling? You always need polling. It's a presidential campaign." Now the decision's been made. And remember, we always kept hearing this. Biden beat Trump. He's the only person who's ever beaten Trump, which is a stupid.
Not true.
It's stupid logic. I mean, Bernie Sanders probably would have beaten Trump by more.
Sure.
And it's like any number of other candidates might have beaten Trump. And, it's just sort of like, it's like, and so what? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, you could go back to the last time we had a situation like this, which were, these Grover Cleveland, the Grover Cleveland's in, Grover Cleveland's out, Grover Cleveland comes back. And, there's these rematches with Benjamin Harrison. One time it goes Benjamin Harrison's way, but the next time it doesn't go Benjamin Harrison's way, right? So it's like, it's like big deal. I mean, that's like, you would think that like in this day of big data, right? Most money in political campaigns gets spent on data, not on ads. And so in this age, you would just think that like, okay, we need numbers, we need facts, we need to respond to facts. These guys around Biden and the Democratic Party, it was like a religion. It was like a religious cult. It was blind faith. It was not real. They just, they were out to lunch. How could and now we're, it's hilarious. They spent the last 4 years talking about Trump and how bad Trump was while Biden was president. And I would say, but Trump's not the president. Let's talk about Biden. Well, now it's like that this has happened. They're saying, well, Biden's not the president. Let's talk about Trump.
Yeah.
They just want to talk. It's maddening because they're still insulting the intelligence of the American people.
They are. And they might be more convincing if Biden had ever stood for something. Like for example, Biden was always one of these middle of the road guys. He may early on have been kind of racist. He was against integration through busing. He was the primary author of the terrible criminal justice bill of the 1990s. If he was, a Democratic version of Ronald Reagan, or if he was a John Kennedy figure who actually stood for something,
right,
and people could rally around him, and he inspired passion. All right, then maybe I could see, for old time's sake, we're going to cover up for Joe. Yeah, but he was none of those things. None of them.
That's
I remember.
They covered up for FDR too, right? They covered up for FDR.
Sure. Yes. Exactly.
FDR was a god. People had his portrait up in their homes. They thought that
my grandparents did.
I used to see them in garage sales when I was a kid. People thought that he had saved them from dying of starvation. He created the New Deal, the social safety net as we know it. And so, if he's getting a little long of the tooth and he's going to violate, the gentleman's agreement that we only serve 2 terms, well, there is Hitler and Tojo to consider, right?
That's right.
I mean, I get that.
Let the man finish the job.
Yeah, let him finish the job. And then in 1944, okay, he kicked months later, right? So they should not have. But still, and the war was pretty much won by that point. But they didn't know what they were going to do. What we're going to let Henry Wallace be president? So
right, exactly.
So I mean,
one of my heroes.
I love him. I get that though. I get it. Look, I mean, that's the other thing, right? That Joe Biden, as national grandpa, he was always an asshole. I mean,
always from when he was young.
Yes,
from when he was a young man, he was an asshole.
Day one. And like the sympathy for him, I mean, it's like, okay, well, he's had tragedies in his life, no question. If you live long enough, a friend of mine said everybody has tragedies in their life, and
that's right.
And it's like I don't make light of what's happened to him, but that doesn't get him off the hook for any of this, and I don't understand the sympathy for him. I don't understand the cover up for him. I don't understand the idea that only he could save us from Donald Trump. There was, in 2020, there was an incredibly impressive lineup of Democrats up on that debate stage when Joe Biden was coming in fourth in primaries, right? I mean, if we really look at this, right? I mean, Pete Buttigieg was very impressive, even though he was wet behind the ears, and but he was an impressive guy. Amy Klobuchar, totally respectable, better than Joe Biden.
The governor of Washington State, Cory Booker too. Yeah, there were lots. In fact, remember Bernie, there were so many Democrats running for president. They had to separate them into two nights. Yep, Elizabeth Warren.
Right. Yeah, there were like 18 of them, and and Elizabeth Warren. I mean, who on earth can look at Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden and say, "Yeah, I'm going to take him"? Like, what on earth are you thinking? She was as fast asleep. She was smarter than he was wide awake. I mean, it's completely, it's inconceivable. I mean, it must be maddening for people like her.
Oh my God, Ted!
Their counsel. They all have to shut up. It's a mafia.
Yeah, they do. It is. It's a mafia. The fix was in from the beginning. During the 2020 campaign, when Brian Becker and I still had our show, I know I've said this before, but it's even more appropriate now. There were 3 incidents that so bothered me that we spent, a quarter of the show talking about it. Once, Biden was giving a speech and his eyeball started bleeding, right? And the whole white of his eye became red. He had some kind of like surge in his blood pressure. It's an old man thing. This happens when you're an old man. Your eyeball just spontaneously starts bleeding.
Lovely.
Number 1. Oh, just awesome. Number 2, he's giving a speech and he's, he's talking and giving a speech and his teeth fall out and he catches them. He catches them and he puts them back in his mouth. I was like, oh my God, I didn't know he wore dentures. And like a decrepit old man, his fucking teeth fall out of his mouth. Number 2. Number 3, it was just a week or two before the Iowa caucuses, and he goes out on stage in Iowa to give a speech, but there are really bright lights. The media are all there, bright lights. He gets confused because he can't see beyond the lights, and he gives the entire speech with his back to the audience. It's like, seriously, this is who you guys want as president. There's nobody else in the Democratic Party that's better than this. This is what you want. Yeah, that's just great.
Yeah, no, thank you for reminding me of the teeth thing. I'd forgotten that. I mean, it's
on YouTube.
There are so many outrageous incidents, right? I mean, I always like the one where he's calling out for the dead lady whose funeral he had attended. She was
killed in the car accident. He went to the funeral and he's like, is she here? Where is she? Stand up for everybody. Round of applause. It's like, she's dead. You went to her funeral a week ago.
By the way, you know who I'm believing right now? I'm believing Tara Reid. I was never 100% sure, but now I do. I'm 100% sure. I believe her. I do.
Oh my God.
Just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got to revisit that,
We actually have to.
Yeah, I mean, we can get her on the show. We can talk to her.
She texts me every once in a while.
Yeah,
Tara Reid, for those of you who don't remember, Tara Reid was an intern in Joe Biden's Senate office, and she said that he got handsy with her one day.
In the stairwell.
Yeah, in the stairwell. Nobody believed her. She ended up, her word, not my word, she ended up defecting to Russia.
Yeah.
And
although you can't really defect to Russia anymore, but okay.
No. And then like 4 months after she defected to Russia, she went back to Oregon to go to her daughter's wedding and then went back to Russia again.
She was defecting to the Pacific Northwest then. She was undefecting.
Yeah. This is a good question. We have a question from Road Beef. When I was with the agency, did I ever write or see a cable about another world leader in a similar, let's say, condition as Biden finds himself? No, never. That's a great question. There was a situation immediately after the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait where the Emir of Kuwait had a nervous breakdown. But that wasn't dementia. His country, he'd been overthrown, his country was invaded, and he just cracked. So, other than that,
Robert Mugabe was super old.
He was like
right?
90-something years old. Yeah.
Yeah. He was quirky, right?
Yes.
By the end,
yes.
super quirky.
Yeah, he was like,
but he was kind of Biden-y a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Muammar Gaddafi, the last few years, maybe he had a lot of pressure.
How about like Suharto? He became quite murderous toward the end.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
That's a great question. Not in my experience.
Duterte's a lunatic.
Duterte is a lunatic. And I'm very glad that he's in the dock at The Hague right now, where he belongs.
That is where he belongs, 100%. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm looking. I mean, I can't stop reading this book. It's just,
it's a page turner.
It is a page turner. And if you've been following this thing, I mean, it's like sort of like every time I pick it up, I'm like, I can see clearly now the rain is gone. I mean, I always had a pretty good sense, but it's like, there's so much. And it's like, oh, okay. So we're not all insane. So I get it now. You guys were gaslighting us. And this is, by the way, what gaslighting is. Gaslighting has come to mean, just lying. Like, my girlfriend gaslit me and she said she was going to the store, but she was going on a date with another guy. That's not gaslighting. That's just lying. Gaslighting is where you are trying to pretend. Gaslighting is where you try to make someone insane and question their own sanity. Where like you break into their house, you move all their lamps to the other side of the room, and you make it look like no one was ever broke in. That's gaslighting. Right. It's kind of stupid, actually. Right. I'm not sure it ever works. But I heard that back in the Cold War, the KGB, did you ever hear stuff about this? Like the KGB used to do stuff like that. Like they would break into like an American journalist's, like, I heard
the Israelis, the Israelis do it now to American diplomats.
What do they do?
Rearrange the furniture, take shits in all your toilets. They do.
It's so incredible.
They're real assholes.
Like, how weak would your sanity have to be in order to start questioning? Like, I'm pretty sure that's not my shit. You would know someone's been in there.
Yeah, but that's what they want. They want you to freak out. Yeah.
Wow. Well, someone's saying, by the way, that she didn't use the word defect. The media did.
Okay. So, okay.
We'll see. All right. So there's a lot here. There's more. There's also the big beautiful bill, which is. Did you know it's actually called legally?
I did not know that. I did not know that until yesterday.
The big beautiful
bill Act.
Yeah, the big bill.
What a stupid name.
I mean, okay, so Donald Trump never ceases to surprise, but I mean, it's like, the country feels, I mean, it's not just him. It just feels like we're becoming so infantilized. And I do feel like it's both parties who are doing it to us. And the media is going along with it. And it's like, it's every detail. It's sort of like how on every station, they all copy the Fox News, gerund approach. Like, bearing down on the East Coast, a storm, with winds sweeping the city. Like
Superstorm Sandy. This is a beef I have. Superstorm is not a meteorological term. It was Hurricane Sandy, period. Right. It was a hurricane. Yes, it was damaging. Lots of hurricanes are damaging. But what makes it a superstorm? What is the measure? I hate that. But it's the same idea.
Superstorm. Like it's like a blaxploitation film.
Somebody mentions Forsen Sebastian. Thomas Massey is the only Republican with a spine. Amen to that. I've mentioned a couple times, he's a friend of a friend, and we've gone to a half a dozen ball games together. He is a delightful guy to go to a ball game with. Delightful. And he always brings like junior aides with him who can't afford to go to a ball game and sit in a decent seat. Cool. He's a really good guy. And he's the only one who's a real... He's a true believer. Like he believes that he has thought through these issues and that his position is right and that you've got to be consistent. You can't just go with the political winds one way or the other. And if this is what he believes, then that's what it's going to be. And I have deep respect for that. Deep respect.
Yeah, no,
and to tell you the truth,
don't fault that.
I cannot think of many Democrats that I could say that about. I would say that about Jim McGovern from Massachusetts, because by God, he's been pro Snowden and pro Assange from the very beginning. But he's pretty much the only Democrat I would say that about. Massey and McGovern, the two of them. Yeah.
All right. Before I have something I want to ask you about that we talked about before the show. But first, there was just a viewer question from Abdullah Alatar. So what do you think of the plans of Israel's plan for Gaza, which is basically to push most of the population, if not all of the population, to a tiny part of the strip, not coincidentally along the border wall with Egypt.
Yeah.
Here we go again.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, what a coincidence!
To, like the spring of 2024.
That's right.
And they want to. And then meanwhile, the IDF is to occupy the rest indefinitely while they continue to, I assume, detonate and demolish all the buildings. What do you think the demolitions are all about? I mean, I've been curious about that. Like, why not just, if you have a building that survived, even if you plan to seize the strip, why not keep it?
Yeah, I think it's all about punishment. We should point out too that what the Israelis are planning is the very definition of genocide. Genocide doesn't have to be just murder of a people. Forcible relocation of an entire people is also a definition of genocide in international law. And so the fact that not just the United States, but most of the Western world is willing to sit back and let the Israelis commit a genocide, it's unacceptable. Like I said a few minutes ago, only the Irish, of all people, the Irish have the balls to stand up to the Israelis and say, this is wrong and we're not going to let you do it, or we're going to do our part to stop you from doing it. Nobody else has the guts to do that. They ought to, because the genocide is unfolding right before our very eyes. Has been for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I think that the Israelis believe that they can get away with it because the United States isn't going to stop them. And the British and the French and the others have said, well, if you continue doing this, then we are going to have to give serious consideration to issuing a very strongly worded letter. What is that?
God forbid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a quick reminder to people who are enjoying the show, and even if you're not enjoying the show, if you hate the show, please subscribe, please follow. It really makes a difference. It makes a difference between it being viable or not viable. So and this is true about any show like this, but definitely just hit that button. By the way, subscribing on YouTube costs you not 1 penny. Subscribe, and same thing on Rumble. Paid support is always appreciated on Rumble, but you can become a paid follower for $5 a month. But it's free. Also, hit like on everything that you see if you
please do.
Much appreciated. Okay, so before the show, you texted me that you had some dish on America's favorite Russian president. So let's hear it.
Yeah. I have another podcast called Deep Focus with John Kiriakou. And this morning I interviewed Dr. Peter Kuznick, who is one of the country's leading Russia experts and a genuinely good guy on top of it. We're going to release it tonight. But he said something that just knocked my socks off. He said that, he just got back from Russia. He mentioned offhandedly, and he goes to Russia with some frequency. He speaks at a lot of universities there and meets with people from Russian think tanks, et cetera, et cetera. And he said that he went with Oliver Stone. They are very, very close friends. And he went with my friend, Ray McGovern. So I'm pretty close friends with Ray McGovern, and Ray never mentioned that he was going to Russia with Peter and Oliver Stone. So he said that that they went to the Kremlin, and Vladimir Putin said, "Oh yeah, let me meet with Oliver and Ray, not Peter." But Peter has been criticizing the Russian invasion of Ukraine, excuse me, and he uses the word invasion, as do we. But Oliver Stone and God bless him, Ray McGovern, went in to Putin's office and met with Putin for 40 minutes.
Wow.
I don't know what was said, but I'm going to call Ray tonight and ask for a readout. And I thought this was absolutely great. Absolutely great. Now, the point of our conversation, in part, was why isn't Vladimir Putin doing as Donald Trump orders him to do, right? This has to be a mystery for Trump. Trump says, come to the table. He expects Putin to come to the table. And Putin said, forget it. We talked about the talks in Turkey the other day, where Trump said, well, if Putin goes to Turkey, then I'll go to Turkey. Well, Putin didn't care one way or the other if Trump was going to go to Turkey. And Putin never had any idea whether or not he would even have been welcome to Turkey. And fresh sub, thank you. I love how Mr. Stone gave Putin Dr. Strangelove on DVD. They actually watched it together. Peter talked to us about that today. He just happened to have Dr. Strangelove, and he asked Putin in this conversation, have you ever seen Dr. Strangelove? Putin said no. He says, I actually have a DVD. And he pops this DVD in, and they sat there and watched Dr. Strangelove together.
I hope he brought the right zone. Said, you know how there's different zones for DVDs.
That's right. That's right. Yes. Yeah. It craziest thing. So I got to call Ray tonight and say, Ray, you gotta lay this on me. What the heck happened? What did Putin say? Oh my God. Very, very interesting to me. But he said something else that was also very interesting. Here in the United States, especially in the American media, Putin is a dictator. He's a strong man. It's a monolithic government. None of that is true, Peter said. Peter said that there are insiders to both the right and the left of Putin. There are hawks and there are doves, and he has the same kind of balancing act as any American president would have. And so, whether Donald Trump just gets up and says, Putin, go to the negotiating table, that's not enough to make Putin go to the negotiating table. He has his own domestic politics to worry about.
That's exactly what this is about. I have thought from all along.
Yeah.
I mean, even if secretly, in his heart of heart, Putin agreed verbatim with everything that Trump wants. and I suspect they're not that, there's not a lot of daylight right now, I think, between where Trump, I think Trump basically sees things Russia's way. And he wants the war to end. And basically, I think if Trump could snap his fingers, Russia would probably get everything that it asked for, except for formal recognition of the loss of Crimea and the Donbass. But they would, but basically would get everything. But Putin can't.
And I asked Peter about that. I said, "Is that what's going to happen?"
Dog, right?
Yeah.
Go.
Right. I asked Peter about that. I said, the Ukrainians are going to lose Donetsk and Luhansk and Crimea, right? And he said, yeah, they're going to lose it. That's it. That's the only way this ends. There's a possible ceasefire line that's almost perfectly along the border.
Yeah,
of Donetsk and Luhansk. That's going to be
what
it.
It looks like to me too. And it's in all, the idea that, like, we keep hearing, like, Putin wants to take over all of Ukraine. Okay, in the beginning days of the war, I think I think the idea was like, well, Ukraine might be weak, and we're going to go like, and if it goes, if Zelensky blows away, great. But it didn't go that way. So,
right.
It's like, fine, never mind. But the Russians got what they came for, and they don't want to occupy the ethnic Ukrainian parts of Ukraine. They'd be a pain in the ass. They'd be dealing with resistance of all sorts. It would be a restive populace. No one needs that. That's a pain in the butt. And also the idea that they're going to invade Poland and the Baltics. These guys are all smoking crack. That's not in Russia's interest. The idea is Russia wants land. Really, if you looked at a map, that's the one thing they don't need. They don't need land. They've got land. Land is like not a problem for Russia.
Yes.
It's not Germany trying to get to the sea.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I agree.
It's so absurd. Anyway, so any other tasty tidbits from the Putin behind the scenes? Like, what was he? Was he?
Like I say,
he was very droll. I read the Philip Short.
I've heard that.
Yeah,
I've heard that. Do you remember the big dinner? It was the 10th anniversary of the founding of RT back in 2015. Okay. I was invited to that dinner. It became kind of famous because Jill Stein was there, Jesse Ventura was there, and General Mike Flynn was there. I was invited to that dinner. I was invited to sit at that table.
That's awesome.
And my sentencing judge would not release my passport to me. She refused to allow me to go. Good. Yeah, I was out. I was out of prison, but she said, "Oh no, you're not going to Russia." So I didn't go. Putin showed up at the dinner, and went to the table to shake hands. He didn't stay for the dinner. He was there for about 10 minutes, but he shook everybody's hand. I would have had my chance to meet Putin. Yeah.
I want a picture of me with Putin for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh, it'd be fun.
I think he's absolutely fascinating, for sure. Agree. And I think he's a very impressive guy too. I don't share his politics, but I understand why Russians vote for him. I do.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially after the Yeltsin experience, that was extremely traumatic.
Chaos.
And we installed that idiot. We
did. We did. And the negotiation reportedly was that we would have no objection to Putin replacing Yeltsin so long as they didn't prosecute Yeltsin for corruption. So we acceded to Putin.
Well, to quote Robert Herr, I think Boris Yeltsin would have come off as a kindly, well-meaning alcoholic, unable to, there's no mens rea with that guy. Although I don't know if that's a part of Russian law.
Say that again.
It's like, God, George H.W. Bush really fucked up. In 1991, we had the opportunity to help the Russians come in for a soft landing from communism and turn them into an ally and they wanted that, and instead we fucked them. And
Yes.
it's like, I mean, they're just getting over it now, and now we still want to do it again. I mean, we're the worst, really.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. We have a question about the START treaty. Do we want to answer that? So there's a
Peter Kuznick touched on this as well. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ted. Peter touched on this as well.
Who are listening and not watching, what are our thoughts on the new START treaty expiring? Cap on nukes will end. Will there be a new arms race?
Yeah, Peter says the answer is a clear yes. He said that Russia had 150 nukes before the START treaty was signed. They destroyed 100 of them. That made it 50. Once the treaty expires, there's no reason why they wouldn't replenish what they destroyed, especially with relations with the U.S. being in the state that they are. That he was told the Russians want to get back up to 150 and then 200 nukes. But he said that the Chinese are doing the same thing, that they've got about 150 nukes now. They're going up to 200. And there are plans by 2050 to go to 2,000 nukes.
Wow.
And not only is nobody talking about, renewing START, they're not talking about inviting the Chinese in. There aren't even any plans for discussions. Nothing. So to answer your question about whether it's going to be a new arms race, I think the answer is yes.
What a waste.
Oh, wait. Jay, we don't like Putin. We never said we liked Putin. No, I don't like Putin. I respect Putin as a leader. I think he's good at what he does. But no, I'm against American imperialism just like I'm against Russian imperialism.
I'm against
Israeli imperialism. Yeah.
I'm the same.
Yeah.
Look, I agree with you, John. Look, here's the thing is I can objectively find someone impressive. I met Fidel Castro. I found him impressive. That doesn't mean that I admire that I would vote for the regime, the autocratic regime of Cuba that he had. But was he an incredibly impressive man with an incredibly impressive history? Absolutely. As a figure of, I think, you don't have to, I don't know. It's kind of like we were talking about Joe Biden earlier. He's not an impressive man. Even, people are trying to make him impressive.
That's absolutely right.
And even though on the other hand, I agree with the infrastructure bill that Joe Biden pushed through in 2021. I thought that was a good bill. I think we need infrastructure. That was great. I can agree with something that he did and still say he's a mediocre intellect. He's a bad person, and he was really not an impressive guy at all, shape, or form. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is impressive in some ways. You have to be able to be objective about people, and it's kind of like separate the art. Like I think James Wood's politics are stupid. He's a great actor. Those two things I could live with. Clint Eastwood, I think I didn't like his RNC appearance. I love Clint Eastwood movies. I'll see anything that he directs. I'm sorry. I think it's like there's this thought that like you have to, if you say anything nice about someone, it means that you agree with them and that you like them.
Yeah. I agree with everything you just said, except Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Well, she is kind of impressive considering where she came from. She gives hope to skanks everywhere.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, the other one's worse, Lauren Boebert. Oh my God.
True. I have.
Oh, this is a good question from Castro. Where does William Burns end up when Trump appoints new CIA director? Burns is gone. I wrote an op-ed when Burns was named CIA director saying this was the best possible choice for CIA director because you need an adult in the room to smack these guys down and tell them no when they want to do something stupid. And Burns not only was a career ambassador, having been ambassador to 4, 5, 6 places, he was also the Deputy Secretary of State, which is the official that runs the day-to-day operations of the State Department. My guess is that Bill Burns is going to get a gigantic book advance, and he's going to end up on the board of some think tank here in Washington and live happily ever after. I think in terms of a career, it's probably over. I think he's going to enjoy his retirement. He's got to be, I'm 60, so he's got to be 70, 72 maybe.
Oh, I got to put this one up. All right, yeah, so I agree with you. Yeah, all right, let's. So one of our posters says, "Hey, John, I'm a local embassy staffer. Let us know if either of you want to speak more regarding the event." Yeah. So
absolutely, yes.
Drop us a line. You can contact me through my website, rall.com/contact. John, I don't know if you have a way to be reached that way.
Yeah, you know what? My email address is no secret. I think it's even in my on my website. It's easy. It's jkiriakou@me.com. So thank you for that. Thank you for that.
We'll look forward to hearing from you. And if you're lying to us, we will kill you. All right.
I know.
Because after all, we've been lying to you now for 5 years about Joe Biden. No more. So, oh my God, this is so fun. This is like Open Mic Friday. Do we see China invading Taiwan in the next 4 years? Well, John, you're the expert here. I'm going to say no friggin' way. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to say no. And I don't want to give the Chinese too much credit, but the Chinese really don't have an imperialist history besides Tibet. They've fought a couple of border skirmishes with the Indians over the years. They fought a border skirmish with the Vietnamese back in the 70s, but they really are not quick to use military action. I will say that there were reports last week when 5 Indian jets were shot down that it was not the Pakistani Air Force that did it, that they were actually Chinese pilots. I don't know if that's true or not.
I doubt that.
But I can't see a war on Taiwan. It's just there's no upside to it. There really isn't. It could lead to world war, and it's just not worth the trouble. Sean Ryan canceled me 2 weeks ago. I was getting ready to fly to Nashville to do it. Yeah, and his producer said that I'm just not important enough. Sorry.
Oh well, that can happen. Oh, yeah. I want to know the answer to this question. Any spooky DARPA experiences for people who don't know what that is? That's what is it? The Defense Advanced Research Project.
Yeah.
Something.
Agency.
Yeah. So that's like the high cool like gadgets and stuff.
Oh yeah. Everything that's futuristic. To tell you the truth, DARPA and what DARPA does is so highly classified that almost none of us at the CIA were cleared to know any of it. So I had literally zero interaction with DARPA. Nothing. At the CIA, most of the cool spy gadgetry that we used, we just bought off the internet.
Is it true? I read at one point that someone that there was, God, what was that store? There was a chain store that sold spy type gadgets. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, there was the spy shop.
Yeah, well,
there were like a half a dozen of them, and much of it was just from Radio Shack. We would just go buy the parts at Radio Shack and put stuff together.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. You know why? Because it's so much cheaper just to buy it than it is to reinvent the wheel. Like in Pakistan, I used more spy gadgets in my 6 months in Pakistan than I used in the rest of my entire career combined. And all of it but one gadget we purchased online. There was one that we made, and it took about 2 days to put it together.
So you're saying it's not like the Bond films, like, hey James, we have something
Unfortunately,
you'll
no.
really like.
Yeah, and it's something that you really like, but we didn't have any of that, unfortunately. I told this story a couple of times where on my first day at the CIA at lunch, all of us met our new bosses, and our bosses took us to lunch. And the CIA has a couple of interior courtyards. And I happen to glance out the window, and I see this robot mowing the lawn. And I said, hey, that robot's mowing the lawn. And my boss said, yeah, we invent a lot of things here. And that's one of the things. They're not exactly sure what to do with it. They developed this technology, but they don't know what to do. So it's just mowing the lawn. Like 5 years later, the Roomba is released. And that was the robot that I saw mowing the lawn. They just converted it into a vacuum cleaner and called it the Roomba, and they licensed the technology.
That's awesome. Yesterday, I saw an interview with Elon Musk where he was saying that he expects there to be humanoid and androids that will be within the next few years. The demand, he said, will be off the charts, and you will walk down the street within the next 5 years, and you'll see one walking down the street, and you'll be like, "Who's that non-dude dude?" Or "What's that non-dude dude?"
People, but you know how people are. They're going to want to have sex with them. And if you can't, if you're going to spend that kind of money on a robot, you're going to want to have sex with it. And if you can't, then nobody's going to want to spend that kind of money.
There's a great movie about that, by the way. Highly recommend. It's called Companion. It's currently out. I forget which streaming service, maybe either Max or Netflix, but it's one of those. Anyway, highly recommended. It's about that. It's about sex bots, basically, and it's very, very clever. All right. Well, I'm trying to think. Is there anything else we failed to hit here, John? I love the hodgepodge.
I do too. It's fun.
It's totally fun. Let's see.
Oh man,
a whole spate of comments came in here. All right. So should we do? Yeah, I kind of like. I gotta say, sex. I kind of agree. Would sex bot? Okay. Question: will sex bots solve the incel problem?
Probably.
Well, that's good.
Didn't Elon Musk say that we're going to send our incels to some other country? He said this like 2 weeks ago. We're going to send our incels to some Middle Eastern country or something. I don't remember.
America's loss is Qatar's gain. Really? I mean, by the way, do you pronounce
Jay asks Qatar. In Arabic, it's Qatar, but it comes from down here, Qatar. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have that in my vocal cords.
Jay asks another question about what accepting the Qatari jet will entail, and I mean they're gonna have to literally take it apart and then put it back together again. I just read an article. Yeah, I just read an article the other day saying that the jet's worth $400 million, and to take it apart and put it back together is going to be another $600 million. So is it really worth it?
Reminds me of the 1966 Barracuda that I bought for $4,000 and put $25,000 into it. Not really the best buy, although it was a great car. It's really
cool car.
Yeah, it had the biggest piece of glass ever put into an American sedan. Good for the, and it was not a slow car by any means. It had a 340 V8. It was you could outrace pretty much anything. All right. So, and then I guess, should we feel, I got to ask you this. Do you believe for 1 minute that Joe Biden just found out that he has cancer?
Oh, come on. An 82-year-old man not getting a prostate exam since 2014? Come on. Whoever his doctor was should lose his license if what they're telling us is true. I don't believe for a second it's true. No.
Well, also, he's the president,
No, no,
right?
no.
I mean, the president is automatically, sir, it's time to go to Walter Reed for your annual physical. And the PSA
That's
test
right.
is part of that workup, right? Always. Nothing
Yes.
extra is required.
Exactly.
They draw blood and they just send a little bit of it over to the PSA people, right? So, and we know that they
That's
did it
it.
for Trump
That's
in 2017, 18, 19, and 20. So they stopped doing it in 2021. Like, we don't need that.
Right.
You know,
Like magic.
hold the Mayo, hold
Yeah.
the PSA test.
I don't buy it for a second. Nope. Don't buy it. No, and what would their defense be? Would their defense be like, okay, we lied to you about everything else, but he really didn't. We're telling the truth about his PSA levels. Come on.
Yeah,
No way.
that's the problem. And it is true. I should say that someone else is putting up that, and the Dilbert guy has it as well.
Yeah, the
Scott Adams, who I know, a friend of mine.
Adams, yeah.
And I worked with him at United Media. I was his editor, and seriously, it's horrible. And of course, the thing is, we're in such an environment. I have to admit, Scott's a troll and he's a prankster, and I wouldn't put it past him for this to all turn out to be like a lie. I mean, like I had friends that, like, we've talked about, like, how the Pulitzers have gotten totally woke, like you have to be, a trans Native American, this and that to win. And I was like, I need to claim that I've transitioned. And we literally were plotting how to do that. And like, I wouldn't change anything. I'd just be the same guy. But I'm like, now you have to call me Tadina or whatever. And just to see if, like, as a prank, to expose their stupidity. But, it probably wouldn't land, and trans people would be mad at me. I'd be the new J.K. Rowling. No one needs that.
Right. But without her money.
So,
yeah.
Oh my God. So here we go. This is hilarious. I just hope POTUS Joe is going to be okay. Y'all ain't cool like that. I don't know. I mean, would I care if Hitler got cancer? Not really. I mean, I'm not going to pretend false sympathy for a person who is a very bad person. I mean, look, I'm against cancer. I hope cancer goes away.
Yeah.
Cancer should stop bugging the human race, including Joe Biden. But, I mean, he's a guy who literally laughed his ass off for 2 years of genocide in Gaza. I mean, of course, maybe he wasn't. Maybe he didn't really know, but but he's always like a militant Zionist. That goes way back.
Oh yeah, he's always been an ardent Zionist. Yes.
So
yeah.
All right, I think we're probably gotta wrap it up here. Let people be.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Really appreciate it. Please.
Thanks for joining us. And
a reminder, if you're just joining this, little housekeeping, please subscribe, please follow, please like, please send to your socials, please tell all your friends, please tell your mom, your dad, your cat, your dog. Appreciate it. And I have a new book out, What's Left. Please buy it. Really actually, it's selling pretty well for a book about the radical left. So
excellent.
People seem to be enjoying it. So we'll be back soon. We'll let you know.
Good.
Watch the socials. Bye, everyone.